We need to have a serious conversation about MAiD in Canada because there are far too many of you completely misinformed about the entire situation. And instead of having constructive conversations, the second that somebody says that it's being abused, a whole bunch of you are like attacking them and getting mad at them and making it sound like they don't want MAiD in Canada at all, or that we think that the people who are applying for MAiD are the ones that are abusing the system, which is not true. If you want more context to the conversations that are being had about MAiD, I am going to link back to a TikTok video, which I think is a CTV news story, as well as link to a YouTube video by PBS. My only issue with the PBS video that they put out is they did interview a whole bunch of disabled creators, but they interviewed a whole bunch of American disabled creators and their opinions on like the idea of MAiD instead of actually engaging with Canadian creators who live in Canada and are living under this MAiD experience to get more of a first-hand account. But overall, the video is very informative about kind of the concepts of MAiD. When we are having this conversation of MAiD, you need to remember that there are three tracks of MAiD, okay? Track one is terminal illness. That was approved in 2016, and that is what most of you think of when you think of MAiD or dying with dignity. Track two is disability and chronic illness. This is where the issues are coming in. That got approved in 2021. And then track three, which is mental health, which has currently been postponed because there's already issues with track two. When people are saying that MAiD is being abused, we don't think that the people who are signing up for MAiD are abusing it. We also don't think that you can just get MAiD or apply for MAiD like it's a quickie Vegas wedding. We understand that it is a long process. The abuse is coming from like the systemic side, the government side. They are the ones abusing MAiD, not the people asking for MAiD. In all three of those categories, which I'm going to go more in depth in a moment, there are people who are suffering. There are people who deserve to have the right to choose to die, and they deserve to have the right to get assistance in dying, and they deserve to have the right to die with dignity. Unfortunately, currently, what is happening is on the kind of like government side, these systems are being abused, people are being coerced into dying, and that is not okay. And because that's happening, we have track three being postponed, and you have the UN calling on track two to be rolled back because of those abuses. As I mentioned, track one is what most people think of when they think of MAiD. So these are people with terminal illnesses who are not going to get any better, and they want to die with dignity before they completely decline. These people don't want to just keep deteriorating until they die and suffer while they do it. They want to be able to choose when they die, when they still remember everybody around them, when they can say the goodbyes that they want to say and they don't want to prolong it. And they have every right to do that. Think of people with terminal cancer or dementia or Parkinson's. I have used the example of Robert Munch before. He has, I think it's dementia, and he has been approved for MAiD. So when his cognition declines to a point where it's no longer viable for him or he's no longer comfortable, he can make the choice to end his life. And he has every right to do that. Track three is mental health. And yes, I just skipped track two. You aren't mishearing me. I'm explaining track three first because I'm going to explain what people's concerns are in terms of abuse, and then I'm going to use track two to show you what the abuses that are currently happening are. So for track three being mental health, ideally what is supposed to happen is that people who have mental health illnesses, who have tried every drug, every therapy under the sun, they are not getting better and they are suffering. They should have the right to choose to die. What should not be happening, and what people's concerns are, and in part why track three has been postponed, is somebody having a mental health issue and they are suffering not because they have tried everything and it's not working, but because they cannot access care. Where I live in Ontario, therapy is not covered under OHIP. Drugs are not covered under OHIP. And anything that is government funded, like government funded therapies, have years and years long wait lists to even be seen. Because of the stigma of mental illness, it is much harder with somebody with a mental illness diagnosis to get on programs like ODSP because people don't take that seriously. Even if that person manages to be on ODSP, ODSP does not pay out enough for people to live and survive on. And on top of that, every single year, the government takes away more and more drugs that are no longer covered under your OHIP drug plan. So these people still can't afford therapy and they still can't afford their medications. So they are suffering. If you are choosing MAiD because the government has created systems where you cannot survive, you cannot get better, and you cannot get treatment, that is eugenics. That is abuse of the system. That's not dying with dignity. These same things are currently happening with track 2 of MAiD, which is like disability. And this is why the UN and many other experts are calling on Canada to roll back track 2 because it is being abused. I have made a video before about a mutual of mine named Tiffany, and I'm just going to use her as the example. Tiffany needs a whole bunch of surgeries that the provincial government is refusing to allow her to get in a different country. And this is not a matter of Tiffany requesting some crazy experimental surgery that would never be approved here, and that's why she's being rejected. If Tiffany had needed some of these exact same surgeries 10 years ago, they would have been done in Canada. But unfortunately, with her EDS issues, and she has other issues on top of that, there was only one surgeon in our entire country who could perform those surgeries. And that one surgeon murdered his wife. So now he is in prison, and he has been in prison since 2016 or 17. And in the last 10 years, the Canadian government has done absolutely nothing to replace that one doctor. And so now the Ontario government won't pay for her to get that surgery among other surgeries done in another country. Tiffany is also on assistance, which puts a whole other level of barriers to her getting care. She can only leave the province for a limited amount of time before her assistance would be either cut off or reduced. And she can only have a certain amount of assets in her bank account at any given time before, again, her ODSP is either cut off or reduced. So even something like a GoFundMe, she would have to be extremely careful with because the government would just take that money from her so that she still can't get care. Without any care, Tiffany will eventually die. Tiffany could live if she could receive care, but there doesn't seem to be any way for her to actually viably receive that care. And without any other options, Tiffany has applied and has been approved for MAiD. That's not right. That's not okay. Because basically, what the government has said to her is you can either die a slow, painful death, or you can die with dignity. But either way, you're dying. They have not given her the option to live. This is where the problem is. This is where the abuse lies. So I hope that is a little bit more clear. I'm going to make a separate video about the UN's report on all of this to go further in depth, but I hope this can give everybody a base understanding about what everybody is talking about so we can actually have a constructive conversation and actually start making change, moving the needle, and fixing all of this.